big white room at the edge of the universe. There was this big white table in the middle, and my council was there. And on this table, they rolled out my blueprints for my life. So there was this line down the center of it, and it still had this life force moving back and forth in it. This life force meant that I was still alive. So in my NDE, my body didn't die, but my soul left. So with my guides, we went through everything I'd been through up until that point. So we had that life review. There was these different juncture points, and they explained to me that these juncture points that sort of looked like fuses, at this point now you can rearrange that remainder and choose what you want to do. And I remember the first fuse was chronic illness. And I remember pulling that out. It's as simple as this, and I just pick up a different one. And they're like, yeah. They asked me again, they said, do you want to stay or do you want to go? When I could see my higher self's view of how valuable a human lifetime is, I was like, absolutely, I have to go back. Like, why would I quit now?
Well, hello, Ginette Biro. Welcome to the show. I'm truly honored by you joining me and looking forward to our conversation. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing great, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm very happy for you to be here as well. And you know what? Every week we bring you powerful stories about life after death, awakening, and what it means to be human. And if that resonates, you'll love what's coming. Today I am joined by Ginette Biro, whose story deeply moved me the first time I heard it. She's a gifted medium, a cosmic channeler, near-death experiencer, and the founder of Avalon Spirit, an online spiritual community and educational resource center. She has spent over a decade connecting people with loved ones who've passed, with light beings, and with higher dimensional consciousness. But everything changed after a routine surgery in 2019, when Ginette crossed over and came back with an extraordinary message. She walked barefoot through lush grass on the other side, reunited with souls from past lives, and stood before a council of light that offered her the chance to redesign part of her life's blueprint. Amazing, right? Well, what she saw, heard, and felt there is not just a near-death experience, it's a full soul transmission. And I just can't wait to hear more today. So welcome to the show, Ginette.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you know, you got such a crazy sort of depth in abilities and experiences and so forth. And I have watched some of your videos before, and I just want to thank you again for joining us today. I think, you know, it's amazing. We got so much to talk about, but it's kind of cool if we start with what you're doing just today. As I check in, you have these regular videos and information that you share with people. You want to start by sharing a little on that?
There's several things that I do in a week, and it's funny how it started. So the reason why I say that is for the longest time, and we'll go back into my story, but I was doing readings, and that's what I did. I would do readings for people. And then I got into oracle cards and tarot cards. I didn't start with oracle and tarot. I started with mediumship because stuff was happening to me as a kid growing up. And so I was doing readings, and then Spirit said, you know, you pull cards for yourself every day. Why not share it? And I was like, oh, well, that's a good idea. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's look into that. And that's how the daily card reading started. So Monday, Tuesdays, and Fridays, it used to be Monday to Friday, but I started sharing the card pulls and pulling them for the collective of those who were watching. And then slowly it developed into every Wednesday, I wouldn't use cards, and I would just use mediumship and channeling and bring through whatever Spirit wanted to share without any tools. And then I think it was last year, we started Galactic Thursdays, where I channel specifically beings from the stars, the cosmos. So it's just this neat evolution of the messages that I bring through on a weekly basis. And I also bring through different short form videos on my Instagram and YouTube and Facebook on, you know, did you know questions, like, did you know that Spirit can move things? Did you know that ghosts feel this? Like, just these questions that people would want to know. So I offer those as well. And then recently a new thing that I've started too is a Spirit tune in and ask is what we called it. And so with the offerings that I share on a weekly basis, a lot of people, when I do Q&A podcasts, because I'll put it out of my offerings, I'll say, hey, I'm going to do a Q&A podcast. What are your questions? What do you want to know? I'll put them in the podcast. And I would always get a certain amount of personal questions too that people wanted to know about their lives, like what's happening with my father and how is my health? And those require a tune-in specific to the person, and I can't do all of those. So we started opening 10 spots every Monday for questions that people can send in their question, and I will answer it, and they'll have their answer within a week, which is a nice thing because when we have a burning question, we want the answer. So that's a mix of everything I do. And then on top of that, once a month, I do a deep dive called Cosmic Consciousness. And this is one of my favorite things that I do because once a month is this deep dive into some topic led by Spirit on consciousness, on how spirits transition, on the cosmos, on you name it. And for an hour, we go into this deep dive and Spirit leads it. They bring through channeled info and it's a lot of fun. So there's a mix of what I do.
Wow. So now where would someone go if they wanted to ask you a question? Do they go to social media, email, website, YouTube channel?
Yeah, so if they want to ask a general question for Q&As or the short form videos, they can either email us at hello@avalonspirit.com or leave the question in any of those comment sections in YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. I scan them regularly and snapshot them for when I can answer the questions. But if somebody wants a specific personal question, that one they have to sign up for at avalonspirit.com under the Tune In and Ask.
Yeah, I know at the end of the podcast, we'll cover a lot of this as well. And I'll put a bunch of screenshots up and URLs and so forth in the description. But I thought it's kind of fun to start with the punchline. You know, it's like kind of get right to, okay, this is what I do and how I can be valuable. And this is how you can reach me. And that's glorious. Now, I know, it's 2025, and you have all these skills and they've come around and matured and they're amazing and you're reaching thousands of people. But there was a time years ago where you were probably just a mere mortal, right? And then this bud started and, and mediumship and channeling and then the NDE. Where would you like to start with that backstory?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will start at the age of 5, and I will keep this concise too, but I remember at around age 5 knowing that there were people in my room at nighttime. That's my earliest memory of spirit. I didn't understand it at the time. My parents didn't understand it either because I didn't grow up in a family of mediums or healers or spiritual people. We had a religious background, loosely religious, so we had a belief in something, but not in spiritual gifts. So I didn't really have anyone to explain what was going on or why I knew there were people in my room, but I couldn't see them. And so it was terrifying for me. I used to sleep with the covers over my face because I was so afraid to wake up and see them because I could feel them. So fast forward to when I was 15, my grandmother passed away and she was my first spirit visitation. But that one happened in a vivid dream state. That vivid dream where we know it's real because it was so real, but it came in dream state, so it's less confronting. So for a long time, I was like, I know it happened, but it was a dream, and therefore it was kind of brushed off as just a dream. And then at about 17 is when I started to hear spirits, and that was very confusing for me. So that was a very tumultuous time because I didn't know if I was sane or not. Because I was like, I'm hearing other voices, and I know that means a mental illness, but I'm very sane in everything I'm doing. And it was a big deep dive and it caused a lot of anxiety. And so basically though, that was a trigger point for me to learn how to master my mind. And that was when I learned how to deal with anxiety, and I learned what my brain was about, and I learned how my thoughts work. And that helped me differentiate between what are my thoughts and what are spirit's thoughts. And when I started to be able to differentiate between the two, I could feel the frequency difference. Again, I didn't understand it at the time, but I could feel the frequency difference. And then as I started to acknowledge that, I could hear it better and it would come in more clearly. So that was very transformative, which then led me to, by the time I was 21, 22, is when I had this pivotal experience that changed everything for me. And I was folding laundry one day in my bedroom. Nobody else was home. And my cat was home, obviously, but I was folding laundry. My cat was down the hall, and I heard this voice, an audible voice, the way in which you and I are speaking right now. And it said, Ginette, look down the hall. And it was this big, burly male voice. And I freaked out. I probably said every profanity possible out of fear. Like, it was just fear. And I froze and I didn't want to move. And again, he said, Ginette, look down the hall. And so I remember I'm folding my laundry and I just like slowly start to peek down the hall. And at the end of the hallway was this man in military fatigues. And he had like a khaki kind of tan t-shirt and the fatigue pants, combat pants, and boots. And I remember I could tell he was in spirit because he was slightly hologram-like. And what made it real for me though is I saw him and my cat was sitting right in front of him looking up, and her tail was doing this like wagging thing when she's staring at something. And it was this beautiful moment for me that just clicked, because I was like, I see him and she sees him. I know for a fact I'm not making this up, because even though I was learning things, I was questioning, like, nobody understands what I'm going through. I don't really know who to talk to about it. We didn't have the internet in the same way at that time, right? So we couldn't just like Google something. And so it triggered for me a deep dive into spiritual things. And so I dove in. I read everything I could. I watched all the shows possible, from ghost hunter shows to John Edwards, the medium who was hosting a show at the time, and just trying to gain knowledge. I was so hungry for knowledge. And then over time, I began to realize I could actually work with this energy. It wasn't just happening to me. I started to be able to work with it, and I met some beautiful mentors. I had 2 really beautiful mentors in my life that really helped me understand it, open it, and hone this capacity to speak to spirit. And then I started doing readings. So I started doing readings sort of just by word of mouth. I didn't promote it. I'd finally put a website out there, but I did not promote my website. I didn't talk about it on my social media. It was very separate, because when that was happening, it was still a time, I remember, like when I told my family, like I'm a medium, they didn't really understand. There was judgment from some people, total open-mindedness from others. And so I just didn't speak about it. And so there was about almost 10 years. Where are we at? Yeah, about 10 years where I was just working as a medium, not really speaking much about it. And I was busy. I had full schedules. I had bookings way in advance. And then I had my NDE. And at this point, before my NDE, and I wrote a book about it, which goes into all the detail, but leading up to my NDE, I was very, very sick. I would hemorrhage severely from my monthly cycles. And so I just, was slowly dying. It was affecting my heart, all this kind of stuff. So we were going to finally do a surgery. And leading up to the NDE, Spirit kept giving me this insight that somebody was going to die. And I remember being like, who is dying? Because I was like, it's not me, obviously. But they're like, someone's going to die. And I remember scanning everyone I knew. I would do this scan on them and I couldn't figure it out. And I finally got annoyed. I was like, no more, get out of here. I don't want to hear this anymore. I'm not feeling well. I just need to get to the surgery. And the night before my surgery, a friend of mine said they got a message from Spirit that told them that I would cross over or I would die, and they were afraid I wouldn't come back. And I remember hearing that, and part of me was like, thank you for telling me. Like, I just felt this calm reassurance, which is interesting because normally you wouldn't think that. And also this like, well, I don't really know. I don't believe it. I'm sure I'll have some spiritual experience when I'm under, but I don't think I'll cross over. But then I remember the night before my surgery, too, my husband was outside cutting the grass, and I remember looking at him, and he was like almost glowing. There was this ethereal essence around him, and I remember looking at the sky and the trees, and everything was just brighter. And I was like, what's going on? I'm like, this is like, it was just this like serene, peaceful moment. And I mean, no one's really crazy attractive when they're cutting the lawn, right? Like it wasn't this, it was just cutting the grass, but there was something so beautiful about it. So fast forward to the next day, when they're prepping me for surgery and they're wheeling me into the OR, I remember having this absolute excitement feeling, this feeling of just like a kid waiting to go down a water slide is how I explain it. Because like that's the most exciting for me as a kid, was waiting for the go sign to go down the water slide. Is that same feeling. And when they put me under, I suddenly just appeared on the other side. And what was interesting is I knew exactly where I was right away. And the reason why is because as a medium, for me anyways, whenever I do readings and I've had lots of spirits show me where they are on the other side, I've seen people fishing in a creek, I've seen people expanded into consciousness, I've seen people resting in what looks like a hospital room, I've seen all kinds of things. But I'm always being shown it like looking out a window. I'm not there, but I'm being shown it, right? Something that's shown to me. Whereas this time, my feet were on the ground. I was literally there, right? It's like I could tell you all about Egypt and show you all the pictures and videos, but when you actually get there and you have your feet on the ground in Egypt, it's totally different, right? And so I knew I could feel the grass under my feet as I was walking bare feet up this kind of grassy hill, and I could zoom in on the grass if I wanted to, just because I wanted to. I could see like the veins in it. And I remember looking at the sky, and it was the most beautiful summer blue sky, vivid. Everything was vivid, just like I had seen that night before, which is interesting. And then with my NDE, I happened upon this beautiful sort of summer picnic situation or scenario. And it's funny because if I would have thought of my own NDE, I would have thought I would have landed on a tropical island because I love the tropics, right? But I was at this beautiful summer picnic and it was so lovely. And at this picnic was all of these beautiful souls that I've known before, and they were all welcoming me back. And it was amazing. And as I saw them all and I was giving them hugs, more and more were coming in, and not only from this lifetime, but from lifetimes before. And I had all the time in the world, it felt like, to visit with them and be like, what have you been up to? And what's happened for you since? And like the hugs there are the most amazing hugs. Like I always explain it, it's like when a toddler runs up and hugs you because they've missed you and they throw their whole selves at you, that feeling you get is the feeling of like reconnecting with those on the other side. And so I spent what felt like hours, like a whole day there is what it felt like. And then at one point, my grandmother, who was in spirit already, took me from there to this place in the galaxy. And I call it the room of the blueprints because it was this big white room at the edge of the universe where the universe is creating itself. It's the best way I can explain it. And there's this big white table in the middle, and my council was there. And on this table, they rolled out my blueprints for my life. And I had always explained life paths, blueprints like a tapestry, is how Spirit had always explained it to me before. But here I was seeing it like a blueprint, and it was fascinating. And I remember kind of laughing, being like, hey, this looks like blueprints that like on Earth. And they're like, yes. And so there was this line down the center of it, this kind of horizontal line down the center, and it still had this life force moving back and forth in it. I could see this life force moving back and forth, but I could see these different juncture points along my path. And this life force meant that I was still alive. So in my NDE, my body didn't die, but my soul left. And I'll explain a little bit more of that in a moment. But I knew that my body was still alive, but I was on this other side. So with my guides, we went through everything I'd been through up until that point. So we had that life review. And then at that point is when they asked me, they're like, now, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And I remember thinking like, oh, okay, I want to go back. I have more stuff to do. And they're like, okay, sure. And so then they showed me the remainder of my life path. And it looks about 6 inches long on my blueprint. But when I go back to try and see in comparison how long that is to what we reviewed, I can't see. I see the shoulder of my guide. They won't let me see what references to figure it out. But there's like 6 inches left. And in that, there was these different juncture points. And they explained to me that these juncture points that sort of looked like fuses, they represent these pieces of destiny that my soul wishes to experience, and that we all do this. We sit with our council and we create the blueprint for the soul with different destiny points of experiences that we desire to learn. And so they said, at this point now, you can rearrange that remainder and choose what you want to do, but you will only remember the very first fuse that you switched. The other ones, you won't remember what they are until they happen. I was like, okay. And I remember the first fuse was chronic illness. And I remember pulling that out. Like, I used to get sick all the time growing up. I was always the kid that would get every flu, every cold, like anything that there was to get, I would get it. And I remember pulling that fuse out and being like, it's as simple as this. And I just pick up a different one. And they're like, yeah. And so I did. I put it in, and I remember thinking like, okay, we'll see. Because I'm literally that canary in the coal mine, right? And so I changed out a couple more. Didn't know what those ones, like I didn't have a working conscious memory of what those ones were, except for that first one. So when I finished that, they asked me again, they said, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And they gave me the understanding that it was simple as flicking a switch, and I would have a massive heart attack on the table and they wouldn't revive me. And it was just like, do you want to pull this switch or not? And I was like, no, I want to go back. And because what was so amazing was in that moment, I was also able to have this conversation with my higher self. And I was me, as I am right now in spirit, and also my higher self, which looked like me. And I was consciously both of them from their perspectives at the same time. And it was seamless. It just was. And so I remember when I could see my higher self's view of how valuable a human lifetime is, like how valuable it is, I was like, absolutely, I have to go back. Like, why would I quit now? And so then my grandmother brought me back in. And in that moment, like as fast as the snap of my fingers, I remember hearing the nurse in the recovery room say, Ginette, are you awake? My eyes were closed. She's like, Ginette, are you awake? And I remember my spirit coming like back into my body. I could still feel and see my grandmother beside me, even though my eyes were closed. And this was the interesting thing is when I've had surgeries before, and when I come out of surgery, I'm not coherent. The room is bouncing, like I get affected very fast with any kind of a drug. And it was so clear my higher self came through in that moment and said to the nurse beside me, I still had my eyes closed, and my higher self said, I need you to write something down. I need you to write down these 4 things on a piece of paper, and then I need you to fold them up, and then I need you to place it in my hand. Like clear, concise information. And I remember listening to my higher self come through. And it was these 4 phrases that wouldn't really make sense to anybody. They were Great Baba, Tree Roots, Time to Entwine, and I Went Far. I have them in front of me. So it doesn't make sense to anybody, but these key words were these trigger points for all of the memories to come back in. And my higher self knew that I would need that to validate this whole experience before I was given any pain meds. Because otherwise I would question, because I'm very analytical that way. I love science, but I also love spirituality, right? So higher self came in, the nurse right away stopped what she was doing, wrote those things down, put it in my hand, and then they gave me pain meds. And it was about a few days after that I had no more pain meds in my system. I remember I was sipping on a coffee and Spirit said, it's time to read that paper. And I was like, okay. And I knew what had happened, but I had like pieces of it. And I remember I pulled that paper out, read the paper, and as soon as I read those 4 phrases, it like flooded through me, the details of it. And I was staying with my parents at the time because my husband took the kids because they were really little. And I went outside and I said to them, I have to tell you a story. I have to tell you what happened. And my mom actually snapped a picture of that first time I told the story. And then I wrote the book and all of that. And so that happened. And then within a short amount of time, we created Avalon Spirit. I started the podcast. I started speaking about what I've learned, what I know, and channeling information because my connection to spirit went even higher. That's when I really started channeling more cosmic energies. And it was part of this agreement that I made with my guides that if I was to come back, I would speak about what I know. I wouldn't hide it. I wouldn't feel shameful for what I can do. I would just share the knowledge. And that's why I do the daily card readings and the Wednesday wisdom and the galactic things and the cosmic consciousness, because I have such a passion to share the information, and it's for people to take it or leave it. None of it is force. It's like, hey, this is what I learned. This is what I know. See how it resonates for you. Because the most valuable thing I think we can do is share stories. We learn so much when we share stories. And so my purpose just expanded in sharing stories of consciousness and spirit and the cosmos. So that's it.
That's it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, so Ginette, first of all, you're a great storyteller. You tied that whole thing up with a beautiful bow from beginning to end, and the flow is just perfection. So thank you for that. And it brings up various different questions for me. I would go back into when you were having the experience and you were looking at the blueprint and making the adjustments. So from that, it feels like if we can pull the fuses and pop some new ones in, maybe you were able to make an adjustment. Most people aren't. They're sort of kind of stuck with the blueprint they created before they came here, I would imagine. So somehow you had the opportunity to go back in and adjust it. Why do you think that opportunity was given to you?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked, actually, because it gives us knowledge of the fact, first of all, that we do create these destiny points. So when we're really upset with what's happening in life, right? Why me? It's usually because there's a destiny juncture point of an experience your soul is wanting based on the value it will receive from the lessons learned, right? And if it's still happening, we haven't finished gaining all the lessons. So that was part of it. The other part, though, was to know that if we dive as deep as we can into whatever we're circling, whatever keeps coming up for us, we will find the root of it. And when we find the root of it, that juncture point disappears. So that's why when you're like, I got the opportunity and other people don't, we actually do, though, when we willingly dive into whatever issues come up in our lives, when we choose to heal them, when we choose to look at what they're telling us, what can we gain from this, is how we move through those fuse points and actually release the karmic bond of it. So knowing that, we can take that knowledge and apply it here.
Right. So if that's a trail of fuse points, they seem to be like these pylons, these challenges that are set up, at intervals ahead of you. And you're gonna hit those challenges, and you're gonna spin around that challenge until you take the time to focus on it, sort it out, and wash it through you, and then move on to the next. It feels something like that.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful way to describe it. We cannot avoid them. If we avoid them, we will likely, by our own choosing, bring that same fuse back into the next lifetime.
Or continue to revisit it here, until we learn. So do you have a good example of maybe a fuse, how you would experience it in your life and how you should focus on it and kind of, overcome it and move on? Is there an interesting example you'd have?
Let's take the desire for someone to save you, right? A lot of people have a desire for someone to save them, to fill a void, usually in romantic connections. So what will happen is they will tend to be somebody that continues to find different relationships where the person is either abusive but loves very fast, deeply but abusive, because what it's doing is it's trying to trigger the person to actually find self-love. Stop looking outside, but rather inside. Love yourself first, right? So they will hit that fuse over and over with multiple people until they realize the work is really on the inside, not searching for somebody else.
I love that. So that's like, if you're in that mode, you resonate with a narcissist who might love you at first, but they're just sucking you into this crazy void. And that is to wake you up to the reason that to the reality that you're looking outside, as you said, for love as opposed to inside. And wow, when you finally learn that lesson, and you know that you're complete and enough in yourself, you won't resonate, you won't run into those sorts of folks anymore. You'll probably have a good relationship after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when when you've completed a fuse cycle, is when either the issue just suddenly dissipates and you're done with it. There's no resonance, there's no say you were involved with a group of people and it was a negative situation. When you're done and you've healed that, your connections, your synchronistic run-ins with them just won't happen anymore because you're on a totally different wavelength. You've done that fuse, and the universe will move you into the next journey.
Ginette, this sounds like a board game. You roll the
Yeah.
dice, you move to the next little fuse, you pull a card, you got to get over it. And it's interesting if you think of it that way, and you sort of just got over a particular fuse, and you're sort of enjoying that moment. Well, what's the next one? Because if this is all blueprinted out and planned ahead of time, the next several are out there for you, and you're going to go meet them. I guess there's no reason to fight any of this. Is if you get to a particular challenge, say, well, this must be one I set up for myself. Here I go.
And here's the beautiful thing. I like that you brought that up, is we set these destiny points, right? But so this is where people are like, is it free will or is it destiny, right? Do I have no control over this or do I have control? We have both. However, you're the creator of all of it, because when we're on the other side, we help to create that blueprint with our counsel, right? We had a hand in, these are the soul things I would like to accomplish. Then we come into this life and we forget it. But we come into this life with ultimate free will of choosing in any given moment how you're going to respond and react. So when you hit that destiny point that you agreed to bring in, you then have free will to choose what you're going to do in those moments, how you're going to maneuver it. So if we looked at free will and destiny, like if you saw your destiny as a certain river and the way it meanders is how it meanders, that is how it is set. But your free will is you in a boat with a couple tanks of gas. You can choose to go with the river. You can choose to use a ton of gas and go upriver the other way. You could get off at the side. Like, that's your free will in the journey of your soul blueprint. But you are a creator in both.
I see that metaphor clearly, although to me it's more like a canoe with a paddle. Because it's like if you're going upriver, you really got to work hard going the wrong way. It's not just as easy as, hit the gas, on your
Yes.
little motorboat. So I love that. And so to flow, I think that may be where the term go with the flow sort of comes, is don't fight it, don't go against it. It's a particular challenge that's coming up. Welcome it, find out why you had set that up for yourself, engage in it and learn from it, I guess, and then move on. Maybe it's easier said than done. But what's interesting is that you have this has been a part of your life for so long, that you just have this knowing that this is how it works, and so you don't fight it. Now, there's a lot of people in the world that haven't had the experiences that you've had. They haven't had the NDE. They haven't had the people in their bedroom when they were 5, and the presence of all these sorts of things. And so it's this crazy world that you have, which is this, what I call, it's this knowing that it all exists and that it works this way. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you're here sharing this, but a lot of folks just don't have the knowing, and they're trying to sort of listen and understand. And they have to decide for themselves what they start to sort of believe, because they haven't really experienced it yet. So what's your advice to folks that are standing right next to you and haven't had the experience, but you've had all these experiences? How do you welcome them into this world in a way they feel that it's real for them, even though they haven't experienced it?
I think the first thing to say is, just because I have this knowledge does not make it easy as a blanket statement. And I'll explain a story on that to give some context. So in that blueprint, right, when I had those last 6 inches left, and I would remember the first but not the next, one of the other ones was a deeper struggle to help me get to the root of some of my health issues. So my surgery in 2019 was the NDE, and then I had a surgery a year ago now, a final surgery, which was actually a full hysterectomy, right, to just end that whole experience. And I thought that would just be a simple culmination, but what I didn't realize is there was a lot of healing still for my body to do based on how I had treated it throughout my life and some genetic anomalies within my own body. And it sent me on a very big downward spiral and crash. I don't think I have suffered as bad as I have in the past year, illness-wise, hospital visits, infections, you name it. It was awful. And I asked Spirit a ton of times, I'm like, I thought we rectified this in the NDE. I thought we had a plan. I don't understand what's happening. Why am I suffering so bad? And I want to validate for people when you're in the suffering, it's really hard. So I don't want them to hear my messages of just change the blueprints, no big deal, change the fuses, as false positivity. Because the human experience itself still needs the journey. And my journey, specifically in this last year, has been realizing on a much deeper level the way in which I treated my body, which I did not think was negative. I'm into health and fitness and all this kind of stuff. But I had to heal my body in a totally different way to get to the root cause of my issues. So yes, I changed the fuse, but I had to heal the root. And sometimes the humanness, the healing of my physical body in human form, takes longer than we would think. So just because we meet a fuse and shift a fuse, or we release baggage, or we release a negative partnership, if we go back to that idea, someone who's with a narcissist and they finally realize I'm with a narcissist and I need to love myself and I need to whatever. Yes, you have that recognition and that fuse starts to dissipate, but then there is the aftermath of the human. And you need to do the healing. You need to do the daily grind of, self-care and self-love and speaking about the shames and the hurts and all of those things, just like I had to heal my body on a totally different level that I didn't know to come to a place of better wholeness. So we have a spirit level and then we have the human level, and we really need to acknowledge both of them. So for those that are sitting there listening, thinking, this just sounds so easy and it's not fair because I didn't have an NDE with this ability to change the blueprint. The human part is where we really need to focus on our healing, on slowing down, on changing our narratives, on all of this to allow the full dissipating of those fuses.
Yeah, well, that means that it's the same for everyone, as we are all human, regardless if you've had an NDE or whatever your level of spirituality is. Yeah. Even if you changed your fuses, you weren't able to see the entire board. And the reason we're here is to have challenges to overcome them. And the intention probably is that the challenges are surprises to see how we act with our free will.
Yes.
Which is how we respond to those surprises. Now, we don't want to take those away from you, even though you had the NDE. I think the NDE is really cool because you were able to do some adjustments, but almost even more importantly, you were able to see how the blueprint process works. And so you could come back and share that with folks so they could go, oh, okay, I'll have less struggle in the world, even though I have challenges. I'm going to meet them. They're going to be tough for sure, but now I know why. Maybe that's a little helpful.
That's hugely helpful. And I have to say, that's what's always carried me through. Even in the adjusting after the NDE, when you spend time in heaven, in the afterlife, and the energy is so pure, so blissful, and not in excess, but just in perfection, when you come back into the density of the human world, it's an adjustment, right? Like, yes, I had all this knowledge I was given, which was amazing, but then you're living in a density that we are right now, at a time of massive transformation happening in our bodies, minds, and spirit globally. Like, it's not an easy time to be human right now. And I think we really need to embrace that and honor the human part as well as the spirit part, and not just neglect one or the other, because it's really about mind, body, spirit wellness that we're moving into right now. So I think that's something important for people to remember too, is embracing their journey from the human perspective as well as the spirit perspective.
And what I heard inside there was that this is a time that's not easy. Now, could it also be thought, if you're, I guess, supersonic spiritual, that you have equanimity, that you don't really judge anything, that you have unconditional love, and that everything is easy because you're not struggling against anything. Well, I mean, that's another thing that's easier said than done, of course. Yeah. But imagine if you were in that mind space where you didn't struggle. Now, what's a good example? Well, here we are today in a kind of a crazy world, and as you said, it's really challenging and so on. But is it, right? So if you were to witness everything that's going on globally, politically, and all the dimensions of what's happening, would you have the ability or give direction to people to have equanimity throughout this, and not really, and take their free will to respond to it in a way that is not low density or highly stressful?
That's a good question. I like to think of it as, well, here's an example. So when I was in the hospital one of the times last summer, I was in a lot of pain. And we were there for hours. It was long and painful. And I had a moment where Spirit pulled me slightly out of my body into higher consciousness where there was no pain. And I had this moment where it's like, thank you. Thank you. And then they popped me back in. But it was enough of a moment to recognize the value, and I'm going to say that because it sounds funny, but the value of the density and the value of the suffering and the value of earth life like a boot camp. Because most of us, unless we're here for a resting lifetime, and that's only a small percentage of people that come in to have a very seamless resting soul lifetime where they live a long time, they die in their sleep, they have lots of money, it's just peaceful, right? They don't accomplish too much. They're here for a resting lifetime because they have probably gone through a lot of hard lifetimes before. They're not going to learn a lot, so they're not going to have a lot of soul growth, but there's a resting element to it. So unless someone's here for a resting lifetime, the majority of us are here on earth right now to go through like a boot camp. And when you're in a boot camp, you're going to get value from it, but when you're in it, it's not always easy. You're going to have moments where you're like, yeah, I can totally do these push-ups. But then you're going to have moments where the squats are just killing you. And you're like, I don't want to be here. Why did I sign up? Right? And so I think there's something to be said for the journey of density and what we gain from it. Because we gain so much from our struggles, from our life lessons. When I've talked to hundreds of different souls that have crossed over, and they so often share that as they were crossing over, they were so grateful for all of the lessons they learned, even the hard ones, and usually especially the hard ones, because of the massive value of wisdom they gained in that experience. So I think there's something to be said for that. It's not about pretending that life here on earth can be just simply peaceful and roses all day long. I think that's hard to come by for the majority of us because of our soul's desire in the blueprint. But I think we can have beautiful moments of it, and the harder moments allow us to appreciate that better. But on the whole, the life journey of a human lifetime is highly valued by those in spirit because of what is gained as a whole.
Yeah, those tough years, and those add up. So it's understandable how someone would come back for a resting life, as you said. It's kind of like a gap year, in
Yes.
between high school
Yes.
and college. I'm going to take a gap year, or college, undergrad and graduate. So, I think we all probably know a person or two that seems to be here for a gap year. Good for them. They, like you said, they must have had some crazy lives before this. Now, based on this particular discussion, then it would make sense that you're all about past lives, choosing one life, going to the next, reincarnation. How would you describe that world?
That's a great question. The way that I've been shown it from spirit, and again, if it resonates for people, then that's great. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Is that we have the capacity to have many different types of incarnations, not just human incarnations, not just on Earth, not just in the solar system. The way in which our consciousness in its purest form, when not embodied, can choose to expand is endless. And so I definitely believe in reincarnation. I know from my own experiences that the energy of the soul continues on. I have memories of past lives on different planets. I have memories of a past life before Earth was fully created. I have a very vivid memory of a past life as a cedar tree, a ginormous cedar tree, 300 and some years old. Yeah, that I went into that lifetime after a very challenging human lifetime where I was able to channel so much energy, it burnt out my spirit energy. So therefore, coming in as a cedar was very grounding and recalibrating to my soul energy. And I remember the first time that I came across that, I was like, what? I was a tree? I didn't fully understand it. But I think for us to assume there is only one path of how the soul truly expresses itself, I think is very naive. I think it is so much more expansive than even we can imagine.
Even with that, and maybe the veil of forgetfulness as we come into a new physical manifestation, do you think that certain maybe traumatic experiences from prior manifestations bleed through and affect this world?
Yeah, they absolutely can. Sometimes they can leave soul imprints. I know sometimes if a soul comes back into a lifetime too fast, they bring a lot of the imprint from the previous life in here, which will cause a lot of flashback memories, traumas, phobias. Some can be very extreme, and it's based on past life. They didn't take enough time on the other side to really release fully. The soul has to release their previous lifetime. They have to kind of come to terms with it, depending on what it was, and kind of put it to rest and bring it into their intellectual sphere of knowledge. If they jump back in too soon, they bring these fragments of it. Other times they can actually lose soul fragments of themselves also. So yes, there definitely can be this bleed through, as well though as we can also bring some amazing gifts and abilities from other lifetimes purposely into this lifetime. I mean, think of those children that are amazing pianists, right? Or amazing drummers, and they're tiny. There's no way they could learn all of that finger capacity, right? It was a benefit to bring that in to this lifetime, something they mastered already before.
It's great to see those experiences. Like you said, some are negative, but there's so many that are positive. And then you wonder. And some of those are actually documented well. There was one child, a boy, who was flying planes around and drawing things, and they figured out he was actually a World War II pilot that was shot down, and they had enough information to glue it back together and to go into history and find everything that he was talking about.
Wow.
So kind of, fairly concrete evidence of the notion of a prior life. Now, I guess the question is did you live that prior life, or are you tapping into the memories of that prior life through Akashic records or something like that? That's sort of the debate that's out there. Now, you might be able to figure this out with some of your additional skills and qualifications and stripes and badges, like your mediumship and channeling. Why don't we shift gears a little and talk about that? Can you share the medium capability and how it manifests in your experience?
Yeah, sure. So I can see, hear, and feel spirit at different times, depending on the energy of the spirit and my own energy. So when it was first starting to happen to me, I didn't understand what was happening. And so I asked my guides one day, I'm like, how does this work? How do I see spirit some days, and then other days I just cannot? And they said, it's your frequency. So the very basis of mediumship and how it works is, if we think kind of everybody is sitting in a third dimensional frequency, okay? We'll look at it this way. Here's 3D. As soon as you can raise your own frequency past 3D into 4D, then you're starting to pick up on things that are in that energy, spirit beings and so on, energies. The higher you can raise your frequency, the higher you can reach in different types of beings and spirits and worlds and realms and all that. It's all based on frequency. So in mediumship, when I do a reading, I tune in out of 3D up into about 5D, and then the spirit, wherever they're from, they come down to match point my frequency. And as soon as we match point that frequency, it's like tuning a radio. When you hit the right frequency, you get the music. So that's how mediumship works. And so sometimes I see spirits with my actual eyes. I call it 4D physical, because to me they look physical with a little bit of a hologram in that fourth dimensional realm, but I'm seeing it with my actual eyes. Other times I see them in my mind's eye. I get lots of pictures in my mind's eye. Sometimes I hear them audibly. Sometimes I hear them in my mind. Sometimes it's a different voice. Sometimes it's a generic voice that's not mine. Other times they give me direct knowings of something. Other times they will impress feelings and sensations or injury or illness on my body, so I will feel it. And it's really been a journey of learning this language of subtleties, because mediumship is really about subtleties. It's very subtle things that occur, but when you start to recognize them, they feel more prominent. And that's kind of how it works. So, I mean, during the day, most of my daily life, it's not like a bubble of protection, but I kind of keep a little bit of a smaller energy field, because if I did a reading, say, and I'm in 5D and I go grocery shopping after, I will feel completely overwhelmed and probably pick up on a ton of spirits in that store. It's totally overwhelming to my nervous system. So I will bring it back down. But I regularly see spirits around my house, usually as orbs is the most common way I see them, passing through, coming in to say hi. It's like a usual daily occurrence.
And are these typically positive experiences? Are they ever negative?
Yeah, very positive. I've had a couple negative experiences, but what I learned was it's all about your own frequency. So a negative energy oftentimes is an energy that's actually sort of like that of a toddler. They don't understand where they are. They don't know how to communicate with what they are. So they will use whatever they can, which can sometimes be flickering lights, the stereo system blasting, cold shivers. They're using energy to try and get your attention because they don't know what's going on.
Is your bubble open enough now? Do you see or sense anything with you now?
Right now, I mean, I have my spirit guides that I can feel sort of like in this top corner. They're often with me whenever I'm doing podcasts or such. I'm not seeing anybody particularly right now.
That's good. So as we have a conversation and maybe there's dialogue questions, we're going down different avenues, they might jump in and share a bit. I guess that's what you're saying.
Yeah, just like they did before when they gave me the example of using a relationship as how to explain those pivotal moments and things. They'll do that often. A lot of the metaphors or the imagery that I use to explain things in my daily videos is spirit. They give the most beautiful metaphors.
Oh, great. Do I have any orbs or anything hanging around on my side?
Not that I see right now, no.
Oh, thank goodness. All right. Well, I tell you what, I have this next section that I have, this segment that's called Heart's First Whisper. And with that, what I do is I end up asking you a series of questions to get to know you even more. So does it sound good?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, cool. All right. And you can have help too from anybody on your side, that wants to jump in.
Deal.
First question, like what is something your soul has always known, even if your mind has doubted?
I would say that we carry on. That like we don't die into nothing. I've always known that ever since I was little, and I didn't know how I knew, but I knew. I just knew. It wasn't a belief.
Yeah, so it's a knowing now, and that sort of grew over time, I would imagine. So if that's the case, here's sort of a sub-bullet on this. Where is home? Is home on the other side or is it here?
That's a great question. I'm going to ask Spirit this because I have my own answer. Like my answer personally is home is anywhere where you're conscious and present. But let me just see what they have to say. Yeah, they're saying home is in your unique expression in any given moment of time. And your home is occurring at multiple moments at the same time as well. So they're showing me how really our souls are having multiple experiences at one time. We're not simply just having this human life and that's it. We also have expressions in various different forms, parallel timelines, future timelines, past timelines, higher self. So all of that is technically home when we are in our most authentic alignment.
Got it. So home isn't the location, right? It couldn't be because if you're in all these different places all at the same time, it's more of a sensation, a feeling, a conglomerate of experiences.
Yeah, and we can have, though, a soul sense of home. Like if you have had predominantly Earth lives in most of your incarnations, Earth would be very home-like to you. Whereas some people have had predominant lifetimes in, say, the Pleiades star system. So they are more comfortable with the Pleiadian energy. But yeah, in its true source, it's anywhere.
I've had this discussion with many, and some would say the other side, where you're this infinite spiritual being that is all everything, might be considered home, but you might have sort of a summer home on planet Earth, and maybe a snowbird winter home, on the Pleiades or something like that.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Well, now here's another use of the term home, which is, when was the last time you felt truly home in someone's presence?
I would say, actually, with my daughter. Now, this is not favoritism, daughter versus son. My son and I have a beautiful soul history as well. But my daughter, there's something with her soul energy that every time that I give her a hug, and I mean, I love hugs, and my husband's a great hugger, and my family's a great hugger, but there's something about her where there's a soul home feeling every time I hug her. It's very interesting. And I was given insights that she would be coming to me before I got pregnant with her. Actually, a small little caveat story, if I can, was I remember what happened. So I had gotten pregnant in February, and Spirit said, you're supposed to get pregnant in May. And I'm like, well, I'm pregnant now. It's February. It's whatever. And then I miscarried. And so I remember in the miscarriage, I was like, I knew what was happening because I was like, well, they told me May. May came around and we were so busy. The timing was not such that I figured it would work out, right? Because there's obviously a window. And sure enough, very end of May, I ended up getting pregnant. Like it aligned in some magical way. Anyways, right prior to that, in between that, I had an angelic light being come to me one day before I got pregnant, that second time. And it said, we need you to sit down and we need to upgrade your body because otherwise you won't be able to hold this frequency. And I was like, okay. So I just sat down figuring it. I have a great meditation. And I saw this beautiful angelic energy with what looked like these energetic wings stand before me and like blast me with energy. And I remember feeling like I was just like, it wasn't scary, but it was so intense. And in that time, they gave me these snippets of her and I could only see her from the back. And she had this long kind of like brown hair. She was about 9 to 11-ish years old. She's 11 now. Tall, lean, and they were like, this is what she'll look like, and her irises will be different from yours. And my husband and I and my son, we all have brown eyes. And I was like, okay. And I remember once they were done with that, I like slid off the chair and I crawled out of the room to where my husband was watching TV. And I said to him, I'm like, we're going to be getting pregnant soon, apparently. And they just had to zap me to help me hold her frequency. I got to go lay down. And he was kind of like, what are you talking about? Anyways, her pregnancy, I felt the most sick possible throughout that whole pregnancy because her vibe was so high. And she was born with blue eyes. And same long hair that I was shown and all of this. So there's this beautiful soul energy. We don't understand all of it yet. I know she has to get a little bit older to get into her gifts and then it'll all blossom and I'll understand. But she feels like home.
Wow. So she has dark brown hair and blue eyes.
Yeah.
That's a crazy combination.
Yeah.
And that energy is unmistakable. And
Absolutely.
like you said, nothing against the husband or the son or the
No,
grandparents
for
or
sure.
the neighbors, but there's just something extra amazing going on right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that would probably be on that blueprint in some way, if you could get another
Absolutely.
glimpse at it.
Yeah.
But boy, you have a whole, sort of life experience between the two of you as she grows from 11, on through.
Mm-hmm.
So that's amazing. That's great to know.
Yeah.
Well, here's another question, which is if you could rewrite one fuse in your own life blueprint, what would you change and why?
It's interesting because my first thought would be, well, definitely the health issues, because that's been a big limiter my whole life. However, as soon as I say that, that's where I've learned my greatest lessons and come into all of these capacities is because of that. So if I was to erase that, I would not be here with you in this moment, right? So I don't know. I think all of the fuses really in this lifetime have been beneficial, even though some of them have been really hard. I don't think I would change it.
Aha, you see, this is a trick question.
Yeah.
You wouldn't really change one to make life easier. You might change one to make life even more challenging.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, probably. The way that I work, I probably would. I'd be like, oh, I'll take that on. Sure. Yeah, I'll do it. Until I get here and be like, what was I thinking?
Exactly. Well, that's your opportunity if you have the chance, again, to change one of your fuse. Mm-hmm. You know now. Next question is, what part of your experience here on Earth do you think your higher self values most?
My higher self loves the freedom of creativity in many different ways, whether it's creating like oracle cards or offerings, but even more so, the thing that really came to me was like the ability to dance. I love to dance. And it's the movement, the feeling of the body moving through time and space, incarnated in this density, in the form of dancing and flowing with music is one of my higher selves. Like there's a beautiful flow that happens for me when I am fully in dance, where I feel so aligned. And it's because of the feeling of moving a body through time and space.
Oh, yeah. And I think I remember one of your stories where you danced with your daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that must have been amazing, just combining the love of dance with this extra high energy from your daughter. Oh my goodness, that would have been amazing.
It was amazing.
Well, cool. Now, what message do you think your spirit guides are trying to whisper to you right now? Now, if I ask this question to others, they have to sort of guess, but you actually get to talk directly to them, so.
Yeah, right? They're actually laughing at this one. They're like, great question, because it's the constant thing right now of patience in my healing. So I've healed a lot, right? Like I'm great for daily life, but I'm not out sprinting down a field yet. And I'm not, running races and doing that level of stuff that I like to do. And that frustrates me because I'm a go get it done, let's do everything person. And so Spirit, as soon as that question came out, they started chuckling because they're like, patience. Patience is always your lesson. It is your constant lesson, is patience.
Yes, but you just want to go after it so much. But is the patience coming slowly but surely?
It has been, actually, I have really changed a lot in the last 10 years in patience, for sure. Like I've transformed so much. I was a very impatient little kid. And people now would say I'm very patient. They're like, you have patience for days. But there's still some things within me that I'm very impatient. And that's whenever I feel limited.
Because when you ask yourself who's in control here, the universe or me, if I think I'm in control, I'm trying to drive this thing, or if I just kind of let go and surrender and apply some patience, I can see the universe takes me on a smoother ride.
Yeah.
Well, the next one is, when you close your eyes, who or what do you most hope is waiting for you on the other side?
Well, this is so neat because I've been there. So what do I hope? It's more honestly that I look forward to when the time is right. I just look forward to it. I don't know. It's not a matter of hope to see, because I know that they're all there and I know consciousness continues. I think I look forward to when it's time. Like I'm not in a rush. I have no rush to get there, but I look forward to going back.
Yeah, that's funny. I interviewed another gentleman, Bruce Vanetta, about his NDE experience, and I asked him a question similar to this, and he goes, best day ever, going back. And he's in no rush either, but he knows once he goes back, it's like he calls it the best day ever. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, pure love and so on.
Yeah.
Well, what would it look like to live your next week with full awareness of your free will?
It's interesting. I pause because I feel like this is a big part of sort of my daily motto, is free will. How do I feel in this moment? Is this bringing me closer to what I want, or is this not? And it's something I've really embraced. So I feel like I do this to a degree, because then there are daily lives of like, got to get groceries, got to do this, got to do that, right? So if it was full free will and I was really just honoring that like exponentially, I think I would book a trip and go. I would just book a trip and go for like my family. We would just be off. Where do you guys want to go? What do we want to see? And I would just make it happen. Like that would be fullest free will expression.
Wow. And then on that trip, each decision you made of what you're going to do would also be driven by pure free will. That would be 1 week, a hall pass for free will.
Yes, of just what next? What, like a couple years ago, there was a movie, I don't know if you ever saw it, called Yes Day. It was big for kids. And it was about this family that for one day, the kids got to choose whatever they wanted. The parents had to say yes within reason, right? So a couple years ago, we decided to do this one day with the kids, and we had the best day. We went to the water slides. We went to this carnival. We had ice cream for lunch. It was just this yes day. And it was this beautiful experience of one day of just free will through the eyes of the kids and whatever they wanted to do. And when they had that full free will, it was amazing what they also chose and what they really actually wanted. And so we've had a little taste of that. So I think it would be amazing if as a family we had this free will holiday where we got to just choose and do. And if we had the capacity to do that, that would be amazing.
Well, it feels like kids have no trouble with free will.
Right?
When you give them that chance, it's like, I'll take it, and they just run unobstructed.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like that. You should do that like yearly, maybe.
I know, right?
What truth have you been afraid to share, but know could help others?
I've given myself the opportunity with my platform to share a lot of truths for people, whether they would like to or not. I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure. And it doesn't mean I don't have one, but I'm not sure.
Well, two things. You might not have one, or you might still be afraid to share, and so you don't want to share.
Yeah, maybe there's something in there I don't want to share.
Yeah, I think it's a good question for everybody, not just you, it's kind of like the free will thing. I'm not really doing free will because I'm kind of afraid of something,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just a good sort of question for everybody to kind of chew on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the last one, if you could merge for just a moment with divine light, what do you think it would tell you?
I feel like it would tell me that all is okay in our world, even though we might think it's not. Right? That in the bigger picture, that it is all okay. All is okay at any given time. And we can understand that in principle, but like the application from the human perspective, I think is really hard. And I feel like that's what it would say.
Yeah, and I think that applies to everybody.
Yeah.
And like we talked earlier, you have so many connection points into the other side that you have this knowing that things are okay. There's so many people that don't. And a lot of those watch recordings and interviews like this, and they just, they binge on them because they just want that knowing, and they feel if it's not going to give me the knowing, at least I can have so many experiences from others, and that's why you do it. This is why I do it.
Yeah.
They can benefit from that for sure. And so that's the thing. It's just going to be okay. Years ago, I think, 5, 6, 7 years ago, when my father passed away, 2 nights later, I had this vivid dream in sort of 8K resolution of him coming back. He was 87 then, but he was in his 30s here, and looking at me like, everything's okay. It's just like, I didn't realize this, but it's all good. And so don't worry about a thing, and it was just, that was so brief. It's weird. It's like not a dream that I forgot. It's this burned in image that I see to this day so clearly. So that was amazing. Everything's okay.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And that's such a common thing that they wish for us to know, because when they do cross over, they're like, it is okay. And we spend so much time stressing here that things are not okay and worried, and rightfully so from our perspective. But in the big picture, it is okay. And when we cross over and we die, it's okay. It's actually freeing.
Yes, it is. I think so. Well, thank you, Ginette. This has been a great discussion here. I think, from my heart for your sharing this whole story, your clarity, your light with us today. It's been amazing. I mean, the way you describe the other side and the deep love and intelligence behind it truly stays with me, and I'm sure with the audience as well. You've reminded us that our lives are not accidents, that we are a part of something vast, beautiful, and intentional, and that every choice we make in this human life matters more than we know, And I'd say, for those listening who want to go deeper, I'd encourage them to contact you. You've got your YouTube and your podcast, and certainly avalonspirit.com. Do you want to take a minute and share those details?
Yeah, so I'm often on Instagram, Facebook. We have an Avalon Spirit Facebook group that anybody can join. And then as well on YouTube, all under Ginette Biro Medium. And I post a lot of stuff there, thoughts, ideas, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. So happy to have anyone join me there. And then, of course, on avalonspirit.com, we have all of the offerings. We also have different practitioners that offer healings and readings and all of that. It's a resource, really, is what it is. It's a resource. So whether people want to connect in with me for a tune-in and ask question, or they want to just browse some of the course offerings we have to deepen their own connection with mediumship, and whatever it might be, if there's something that is aligned, they can check out Avalon Spirit for that.
Nice. Well, for those that hung on with the video this far, there's only one thing that I can surmise from that, is they love hearing your voice and your message and just everything about you. Do you have sort of a final parting message for them?
Yeah, actually, let me ask Spirit. Hold on. I'm just going to ask them and see if they have anything they want to share. Okay. They're saying that for many of us, we are always searching for that metaphorical cherry on top. That cherry on top experience on the ice cream. But they're saying what you don't realize is you carry that cherry in your hand all the time. And they show me their hands like this, and there's a cherry right there. They're saying if you recognize that you carry that cherry with you every day, simply by giving yourself the ability to recognize that you do, life will become brighter. And you realize you're not needing to search for that cherry, but it is within you. Life will become brighter.
Wise message for sure, and inspirational. So thank you again, Ginette.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for joining us on this profound journey. If you found the conversation enlightening, be sure to like and subscribe and share, and put a bunch of comments down below too. We interact with all of them. And until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and go beyond the illusion to discover your true self. Take care, everyone, and bye for now.